Well, hey there, Heritage family. It is so great to be with you this weekend. You know, as a church, we are passionate about connecting with God, with each other, and with our purpose. And it has been a joy over the last few months to be able to live that out in virtual environments. But I have to tell you, this last week, when we had an opportunity to gather together at the Bettendorf campus to worship and to pray and to encourage one another, man, that was an awesome experience. It was so great to be together again. And if you were able to join us, you know how great that was. But if you weren't able to join us, that's okay. We have more opportunities coming up as we as a church continue to expand our circles as we look forward to gathering together to worship in space together. In fact, if you go to heritageqc.com, you can click on a window there that says Living in Circles. And in that tab, you're going to be able to find all of the upcoming events and opportunities to gather in person together for worship, to pray, to be encouraged, to engage in communion together. And so I invite you to check that out and to jump into one of those environments in the weeks ahead. In that same tab, you're actually going to find a group guide, a PDF version of this group guide, which provides a number of great personal reflections that you and I can walk through as we walk in this Living in Circles journey. But there's also opportunities for group interaction that are found within this booklet. And I really encourage you to check that out, jump into this as we continue the journey to, yes, re-engage in physical spaces, but more importantly, to make ourselves available to the work that God wants to do in us in preparation for those moments. And so make sure you check that out. As we engage in worship today together through song, we're going to sing a song called Liberator. And in Galatians chapter 5, verse 1, it says, "It is for freedom that Christ has set us free." And it implores us to stand firm then. And you know, today, as we sing the words of this song, as we sing about Jesus, our liberator, the one who has set us free, let us stand firm in worship today. And let us lift our voices in declaring that Jesus is our liberator. And because of Jesus, we are indeed free. And so let's worship together today.
Stirring surround me with a song of deliverance from my enemy, till all my fears are gone, and I'm no longer a slave to fear, and I am a child of God, and I'm no longer a slave to fear, and I am a child of God.
Desde el vientre fui escogido en ti, me llamó el soy hijo de Dios.
We just finished singing a song about God's unfailing love, which should rightfully lead us into a place of joy and celebration. And at the same time, we sit in a place where when we look at our world and when we look across our cities, we see brokenness and we see pain, we see racism, we see violence, and it leads us to a place of sadness. It leads us into a place of lament. And I want to remind us that as Christ followers, our lament should always be a hopeful lament, because we look forward to that day when Jesus will come again and just set all things right, make all things new. This is not a fairy tale longing that we have. This is based in reality, and it's based and rooted in the resurrection of Jesus. That Jesus will one day come again and bring that same resurrection power to bear on behalf of all of creation. It's going to be a really exciting day. And so right now, I want to invite us into a prayerful yet hopeful reading of Micah chapter 4, verses 1 through 5. And it's a passage that ushers us into a vision of that new creation, of that day when things will be set right, on that day when peoples across the world will fully and truly and freely love each other, regardless of language and race and culture and background. It's a day that we work for, that we long for, and that we pray for. So listen to these words prayerfully and hopefully today. In the last days, the mountain of the Lord's house will be the highest of them all, the most important place on earth. It will be raised above the other hills, and people from all over the world will stream there to worship. People from many nations will come and say, "Come, let us go up to the mountain of the Lord, to the house of Jacob's God. There he will teach us his ways, and we will walk in his paths. For the Lord's teaching will go out from Zion, his word will go out from Jerusalem. The Lord will mediate between peoples and will settle disputes between strong nations far away. They will hammer their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation will no longer fight against nation, nor train for war anymore. Everyone will live in peace and prosperity, enjoying their own grapevines and fig trees, for there will be nothing to fear. The Lord of heaven's armies has made this promise. Though the nations around us follow their idols, we will follow the Lord our God forever and ever. Amen.
Hey everyone, having just taken a few moments to worship in this space, we now want to take a few moments to have a key conversation in this space. A critical conversation, a spiritual one, even a relational one. And I am super pumped to have two personal friends of mine with me to help me do that today. I want to introduce to you Dr. Toyosi Olatade and Chief Paul Sikorsky. Gentlemen, thank you so much for making time to be here.
Thank you, Sean.
Thank you for inviting us.
Yeah, I know you guys are very busy individuals as you serve and lead within our cities, and I'm grateful for the time. Paul, you are the Chief of Police in the largest law enforcement agency in the Quad Cities. You've been part of the Davenport Police Department for more than 30 years. You've been the chief since 2016. You are a personal friend of mine, and you're also a person of faith. And I'm thrilled that you've taken time to have this conversation together.
I appreciate you being in my life and God being in my life and having this opportunity today to talk about what's going on in our communities and in our nation.
Yeah, it's for such a time as this kind of dynamic.
It is.
And Timmy, you are also a chief, but you're the chief medical officer of Unity Point Health Trinity. And you're a member of the Heritage family. You serve on our local church board. And I am grateful for your community influence and your friendship as well in the season.
Thank you.
We love that you're here and not only serving the cities, but serving alongside the church family as well. And I know in this particular season, both of you have been leading in some pretty significant complexities, stresses, even some unrest within our city dynamics. And as a pastor and as a former law enforcement officer, even as a fellow community builder, I'm grateful for what you do as you serve, but I've also had a burden for you guys. You are my friends, and we have sat in different spaces at different times, and we've talked about life, and we've talked about our communities, we've talked about things of faith, and this is one of those spaces for us to even create space to do that today, to just have some conversation. And the reality is that this conversation is not intended to be end-all, be-all. It's not intended to cover every issue. It's just intended to create space to listen, even space to understand, to seek understanding, and to be better and do better as we connect and build bridges. And I'd love to start this time, because you are my friends, I'd love to know how you're doing personally. In fact, if you were to pick one word that describes how you're doing in this season, what would it be and why is that?
Well, right now, optimistic. If you would have asked me that a week ago, probably much different answers. There was times of anger, frustration, just being sick to my stomach of things that I've witnessed, that all of us witnessed on video of things that happen in Minneapolis. But right now, several days later, I would give you my word as optimism.
Yeah, my word will be grateful, and I say grateful primarily because of a couple of things. From one angle, I know that we serve a God that is in control, that there's nothing that has happened or is going on that He's not aware of, and in that light, it says that in this world you have a lot of troubles, but it gives us the assurance that He has overcome. So there, even though I do not know exactly how we'll get out of what we're in, I don't have the prescription to write. I know that we will overcome because God has overcome. So that is from my belief or faith. I mean, that's why I'm grateful, because I know that we're not walking in this alone. I do not feel alone, and also I've seen people respond. I mean, it's interesting that don't let me use the word interesting, but having the crisis we're having or the challenges we're having right now, right through the COVID pandemic, it was quite, I would say, symbolic, because what I learned through the COVID pandemic was that we're dealing with something that we had never dealt with in a long time, or at least our generation has not dealt with. And everyone rallied, everyone stepped in. There was a lot of unknown, there was a lot of fear, but everyone stepped in and stepped up. So I can see that. And it's almost a recipe for how we're going to deal with what we're dealing with now. Yeah. And I've seen it succeed, and I know that there is hope, and probably that's the optimism I share in that, because I've seen how people have rallied, and we're not in this alone.
So I'm truly grateful for the way the two of you are leading within our communities, especially as our community and our nation continues to wrestle with issues around race and inequality and health and authority dynamics. As you have continued to walk that space, and I love that you identified optimistic and grateful as key words for you, but as you've walked in the complexities of it all, what has been most sad or frustrating for you in this particular season?
Yeah, if I would take that, it's especially over the past couple of weeks, it has been knowing that for me and for us, God is love, and the way we express love is one of the main ways we express love is really by loving one another, and they're not seeing that. I think that is the sad part, because I've seen the value of every single person of different color. I've had the privilege of really interacting with many people of different color, different race, different profession, different socioeconomic background. And when you really get to know them, you know that, everyone is valuable, and everyone is created in the image of God, but if we do not treat each other that way, and that's the sad part, because we're tearing each other down, and that's the sad part, that we know, and many of us know that God is love, we're created in God's image, and that we are neighbors, we are brothers, but we're not treating each other that way. So that's the sad part.
Yeah, when we lose a sense of the image of God in the other person, then we lose a sense of their value. Then we're not willing to necessarily listen, which means we ultimately probably don't understand whatever the conversation or dynamic is. Yeah. Paul, how about you? How would you answer that?
I agree with everything Timmy was talking about, and I think for me it's really having seen and tasted evil and hatred and division right here in our own community, and that hurts. I know what kind of community this is, and that's not us as a Quad Cities, but really experiencing that, and that's what hurts the most. And I know we're not alone. I know Jesus is walking with us through this, through these trying times. But to just experience that and to really feel it hurts.
The reality is, leaders, we kind of lead towards what can be. We engage what is for what can be. And you're both identifying a space of saying, I see what can be. And it's hurtful, it's sorrowful that what is doesn't reflect all that can be. So let me transition the conversation slightly, because as you have both served and led within our communities, you both recently took an opportunity to publicly kneel with others in the complexities of this season. And I'd love to take a moment to hear what that moment was, because there are two separate pictures of these two different moments where you each took time to kneel and to be alongside other people in these spaces of complexity. So can you just share for a moment what it felt like, what that meant for you to be in those spaces as you did that?
I yield to you, Chief.
Oh, thank you, Chief. When I was at the Black Lives Matter protest at Vanderveer, we actually called the people closer together, and we all knelt together. And I'll tell you, that moment when I was kneeling and talking with God, I had goosebumps on my forearms. I consciously looked down and I could feel that energy, that power. And we were all one community at the same time. For that couple minutes, we all were together. And it was just a very powerful moment for me personally. But then just to look around and see everybody doing that was for me one of those turning points where I knew, and I know in my heart, that our community is gonna thrive over this tragedy.
Especially as we recognize the strength and value of being together, that we're more together than we are apart. And before Timmy steps into answering this, Paul, much of what you've been leading through is really around the tensions and the inequalities as it relates to the members of our Black community. If I can ask you, why is it important to acknowledge the value of Black lives in this season?
Well, you know, there tends to be this, well, don't all lives matter? Don't, and the answer to that is absolutely. But right now in this season, our focus is on a black man, a black family, and our black community. You know, there is a plight that our black community members live through day after day. We all have to acknowledge that and really learn more about that. I won't be able to experience that and know 100% what that's like. But just being a community member and being a leader in the community and being a police officer in this community, you know, my responsibility and really my heart's telling me that I need to learn more about that, and acknowledge it. It magnifies the distrust of the black community on police when we see what happened, and it was a white police officer in Minneapolis and a black man. The victim was a black man. That just magnifies the distrust that is out in the community anyway because of that. And that can relate to, and people equate that to all police officers, and that distrust just builds, and that's what really we have to do as Christians, and we have to do as community leaders, and I have to do as a police leader, is to build trust after that's just been broken down, and understandably so. When people call us and to come to their worst day, they expect us to solve problems and to be fair. And when somebody within our profession doesn't do that or acts the way that we all witnessed back then, that reflects on all of us.
And every time leaders like the two of you are willing to step into a space and to seek to listen and to understand and to build a bridge of connection and to empathize as much as we can, and that's the place that healing and forward movement can begin to take place. And love your willingness to do that, Paul. And Timmy, you did a similar thing where you, in a space of kneeling with others. What was that space for you? What was that moment for you?
For me, it was a special moment, and a few things made it special. And I will acknowledge that I have been, especially over the past 5-6 years, I have been trying to intentionally understand what has been going on, what are the racial tensions. Now, you know, I'm from Nigeria, so I have a different perspective to this. I have not felt the same thing. I've experienced racism, and that was when I was in, as you know, Sean, I was in med school in Russia. I was there for 8 years. So I've been mugged, but that has not been a reality I've lived in on a day-to-day basis. So I've been trying to learn and engage the community. And when this occurred, and I saw really, I actually took a leave from a lot of my colleagues at work, my colleagues, my fellow workers, the senior team at Trinity, said, no, we cannot let this just go by without showing that we are with other people that are affected. It says Black Lives Matter, and it was white coat for Black Lives. That was the event that you saw that was kneeling, but it was actually all the healthcare workers came out, and I was shocked to see the enthusiasm by every single one, from the CEO to frontline workers. As I got on my knees, what struck me was, this is time to connect with God and really pray for the healing of our land, because there's a lot of healing that needs to take place. As a physician, I know when there's a wound that is not just healing, and there's a lot of healing that needs to take place. And at that time I said I would not waste the 8 minutes 46 seconds I was going to be on my knees. I was just going to connect to God.
I may be biased because you are my friends and brothers, but one of the things I love about the way you lead is with the understanding that there are certain things that we need God to do, that only He can do. And you know there's an element of dependence that we need to place in His hands and look to Him for it to be able to be the leaders God calls us to be in a space. And whether it's dealing with complexities around race or culture or even health dynamics, which part of the reality, and love for you to speak to this, Timmy, just the disproportionality of how COVID has shown up within our minority communities. Why is it important for us to understand that reality?
You know, one of the things that we saw very early on in the COVID, at least in the Quad Cities, I know it was seen nationally, but we saw that even within Trinity Hospital. One of the things we saw was there was just many more people of color that were affected, that were sicker with this. And we said we were intentional in following the demographics and understand what was going on and how different communities were affected. And we saw that earlier on, it was about 14% of people that were sick with COVID were African Americans, and in the Quad Cities, we had their population is just about 8%. And then we look at the Hispanics as well. They actually had a higher impact of almost 25% to start with, compared with what about 9% of their composition of the community. And the question was why, and what do we need to do different? And I remember conversations we had. We had an incident command sort of system at the hospital to deal with this. And so and the questions were, what is going on and what can we do? Why is this going on? And we wanted to really engage people where they were. So we had to move out from the walls of the hospital. So we talk a lot about the church being within the walls and moving out of the walls. I think we needed to move beyond the walls of the hospital into the communities that are affected. And so there was a simple thing, such as there was a case where it was reported that a patient wanted to be tested for COVID. And was felt that it was initially when the test capacity was limited, and that patient was not tested, saying that, assuming that the symptoms were not typical, let me put it that way. And there was a call out from someone else and said, I think if it was a white man, a Caucasian man that came in and said the same thing, he would get tested. I mean, this is what we saw in the community, and we started looking at, so how can we be deliberate, intentional in really listening to people and meeting them where they are. I mean, the same thing can be said in different ways and maybe with a different tone and with a different emphasis, but we should be able to read between the lines as well and understand and be able to treat everyone the same way. And so there was an outreach, and I know Esperanza Center was part of that, to the Hispanic community, to the African American community, to really educate quickly and inform, to make us understand that yes, you are the higher risk just by virtue of being a person of color. But wanted to may not understand why, but wanted to engage, and that was the key thing: engage people where they are, and just know that we are here to help. This is what you need to do. These are the resources you have.
But here, one of the things you said is the importance of engaging people. Like, if we're willing to recognize the image of God in the other person, then we see the value. Then we're willing to create space to listen so that we can understand. And it is about going and engaging. One of the things that we at Heritage strongly value is being a church family that builds bridges out of circles of relationship. And one of the anchoring scriptures for us as a church family is Jeremiah 29:7, which specifically talks about seeking the peace and welfare and the prosperity of our cities. And I just want to read it out of the Amplified Version for a moment. It says, "Seek peace and well-being for the city where I have sent you into exile, and pray to the Lord on its behalf, for in its peace, in its well-being, you will have peace." When you hear that scripture, when you hear those words, what does that passage mean for you? What do you think or feel when you hear that call to seek the peace and well-being of the cities that we live in?
Yeah, I think for me, it's a calling of that, I was put into a position, a calling, if you will, to create peace. And I can relax when we have peace. I can be at peace. So I'm seeking peace through making peace, if that makes sense.
Yes. Wow, that's well said. Can I repeat that?
Please do.
And, hey, it's that's when a few years ago I've read that Bible passage before, and I heard it. Heritage. It was became a foundational verse, and for what we do at Heritage, seek the peace and the well-being and prosperity of the cities you've been called to, and that was a mindset change for myself and my wife. It was, I mean, we've been called to this place, all right, and so it was and for me in my profession, well-being of a city, I can talk about our organization trying to promote and improve the health of our communities, the communities we serve, and it goes beyond the health or the wealth of one person. It's really about the whole community, and for me, it's become almost a call to action on a daily basis. How am I helping to improve the health of the community? And I'm thankful that in my role, I can reach out to not just one patient. I can actually reach out to more. We can have impact on more patients and the community at large. And that's one of the blessings through all of this, is that you've been given the platform to be able to reach out to more people. And how are you engaging that platform to actually do that?
I love how you put that is that we have a platform. You do as well. You have a platform, but when I hear that verse, I also think that every individual has an opportunity to look at their own heart. All of us have biases. All of us have had transgressions. We're human beings. We've made mistakes. We've sinned. But to examine our own heart and pray that God takes those transgressions from us and just heals us, but also to know that every single person has influence, has the opportunity to influence, even if it's one person, if it's a neighbor, if it's somebody at the grocery store, wherever they work, wherever they go, they're a coach, just everybody has the opportunity for this influence of change, of fairness, and of love, and of grace, and we all have the opportunities to do that. It's not just those leaders that we expect, and our community should expect that from us. But all of us have that opportunity as well.
Yeah, we're all positioned to use our circles of influence, our relationships, to build bridges, to really seek the peace and well-being of all people. And that's really, as a church, it's so foundational for us. We even named this building Bridgepoint, to just once again recognize the commitment to seek the peace and well-being of the people of these cities and the cities themselves. And I know the two of you do that in your own individual context. So I wonder if I could invite you to shift thinking for a moment, to really just simply consider what you think would be, or what you feel would be, the most helpful conversation moving forward. Or perhaps I can do it this way. And Timmy, I'll just speak to you specifically. You mentioned earlier that you and your wife Ruth are from Nigeria, but you're also raising 2 African American kids. In the midst of that dynamic, what is one thing you wish that the majority culture understood in this season?
That's it's a loaded question. But if there'll be one thing, that will be one that we all created in the image of God. I think the image of God is what really defines us as humans. We're human because we are created in God's image, and we've been at home right now. My daughter has been reading a small devotional, and interestingly, yesterday one of the things she read was that before we were born, God knew us, and He formed us, and He did that without a mistake. And that's she basically dropped the mic yesterday. And that's what we really need to take out of this. There's this beautiful picture, a song I knew from back home in Nigeria, but I realized later that it was in the Bible, where John in Revelations was talking about a picture of where every nation, every people, every tribe, every tongue. So there's diversity right there, which is called out in the Bible. And what are they doing? They're doing one thing together. They're singing hallelujah. They're singing praise, giving glory to God. That's just a beautiful picture. And that's what we want like people to understand through this.
It's powerful imagery to recognize that we belong to each other and that before the Lord we are one people created by Him and for Him. Thank you. Paul, let me kind of shift the same question but slightly differently. What is one thing you would want the hurting of our community to know or understand about the law enforcement community in this season?
Cut? Oh, man. Give me just a sec.
You got it.
Okay. Yeah, that's. I don't know how I can even explain the confidence I have in our law enforcement here, and the praise and admiration that I have for them. We have the police officers we have that work here in the Quad Cities, and specifically that work at the Davenport Police Department. They are committed, they're dedicated, they're professional, they're human beings that make mistakes. And they're just, they're caught at a place. We have inequities in our community. We've had systemic racism in our nation for hundreds of years. And systemic means systems. Systems meaning educational opportunities or lack thereof. Systems meaning housing opportunities or lack thereof. Inequities with jobs and with poverty, with health care. Timmy so eloquently talked about that earlier. There's so many different lanes that there are barriers to members of our community, Black and brown members of our community in particular, that many of those inequities lead to disproportionate dealings with law enforcement. And, many people want to have simple answers to this very, very complicated American problem. There isn't a policy that I can put in place that would solve hundreds of years of inequity in our nation. If I could, I would do that for our whole community. I would do that for every man and woman that is a police officer out there. I would do that for the victims out there. But none of us have those simple answers. There are no simple answers. So I have great admiration for the men and women who put on this uniform. Our badges are not tarnished by what happens somewhere else, and we won't let them be. We promise to protect this community, and we'll do so. We'll make some mistakes along the way. I will make mistakes along the way, but we're committed. And just over the last several days, week and a half or so, all of that just came out under this umbrella of controversy and frustration and anger. It has come out, and our officers have just responded in such a professional manner, and an understanding manner as well with our community members. I thank God that He put me in this position to serve with them and to serve our community. I mean that.
And I want to thank you for the very real, honest human response to that. Because anytime we dehumanize any group of people, then we lose the value and the image of God in those people, and it creates a space of suffering. It creates a space of grief and loss to be dehumanized for color of skin or color of uniform. And leaders like the two of you willing to step into those spaces, again, become the key to bridging and moving forward, of creating space to listen and understand. And these are our cities, and we love our cities. And as leaders and influencers in our cities, how do you see we move forward from here? Well, how do you see us moving forward as a community and as a people in the days ahead?
Moving forward, I think start with we talked about acknowledging that there's a problem. I think there has to be that that acknowledgement that there's a problem, and we may not know what led to what we're seeing right now. We may not know all the details, but there's a problem. And I can use an analogy from the healthcare field. I'm sorry, I've dealt with that too long, so I'm going to use that. We have, sometimes we do have a symptom. We have a fever. And if I can keep on taking ibuprofen or Tylenol, the fever will subside for a little while. But if I do not get to the bottom of what was causing the fever, it's just a Band-Aid. So acknowledging that, yes, fever is a symptom of something deeper, and seeking to find out what it is and getting to the root of it. Many times the reason some people end up in the hospital with a severe infection is because they have been using ibuprofen or Tylenol to mask their fever for days, and then they end up coming in and they're almost to the point of death. And what saves them is not the ibuprofen and Tylenol that will keep on giving them. It's really getting to the bottom of the problem. I think a lot of us, we stop at just kneeling, and that's it. Some of us kneel in our rooms and pray, but we need to go out and engage to show that love. We cannot say that we're a community of people with equal opportunities without going to demonstrate that. So.
How about we tag team this one? Because I agree with everything Timmy was saying right there, and I will add one thing. I will add personal responsibility and involvement. I think we can't look at others to take care of this problem for us, and I mean all of us, any of us. I think all of us are the solution, not a leader here or a group there. Or I think individually, we all need to own this, be responsible for it, and do what we can do within our circle of influence to make positive changes. And some circles are bigger. Some people have bigger circles than others. But all of us have influence, one on ourselves, our own hearts, and on that circle of influence that we have.
When we're willing to be part of the solution and not simply be part of the problem, there's this space that together we can actually move forward. I'm really appreciative of the interaction and conversation, the thinking around this. And I know none of us claim to have all the answers. We don't. But I do know we understand that prayer changes things. And I'd love, if you're willing, to just ask you to share one way that we as a church can be praying for you in the days ahead in this season.
If I'll take it, it's really wisdom. I think wisdom here is really very important, because you can know things, you can maybe understand things, but the wisdom to make the right decision and the right time, it's critical here to foster healing, to foster recovery, and to foster love. Wisdom is necessary, and I think that's what I would ask for. And
I'll take the wisdom too. And I'll add, I think I would love to add peace, safety, and community. For obvious reasons, and the community part is I truly believe it's going to take all of us. I don't think we can afford to have complacency during this time, and I would really love to have prayers for that.
Well, I commit to you as my friends and brothers that I will be praying that way, and the rest of the Heritage Church family will be leaning in alongside in those specific ways for you as you continue to lead. I again, want to say thank you for this time and willingness just to have a conversation, to create a space to understand and to listen together. And specifically, one of the things the church is doing this weekend is we're creating some space to engage in the sacrament of communion, which that action remembers and recognizes the greatest reconciling act of all time in Jesus. And as we prepare as a church to step into that space, as we even transition now into a space for additional worship, I'd love for you as my friends and as my brothers to engage with us in the sacrament of communion, even as we transition back into the rest of our service time. So thanks again, gentlemen, and invite you to just share this remembrance moment together even now.
Worthy of every song we could ever sing, worthy of all the praise we could ever bring, worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you. Jesus, the name above every other name. Jesus, the only one who could ever save. Worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you. Oh, we live for you. And
Santo como tú no hay nadie, Dios incomparable. Abre tú mis ojos, Cristo, y quiero conocerte más y ser lleno de ti hoy y llevar tu amor al mundo. Santo como tú no hay nadie, Dios incomparable. Abre tú mis ojos, Cristo, quiero conocerte más y ser lleno de ti hoy y llevar tu amor al mundo. Declaramos hoy, Señor, construiremos nuestra vida en tu amor, tu verdad. Construiré mi vida en tu amor, ahí estoy seguro. Mi confianza está en ti, Señor, y no seré